What's happening everyone, my name is Alex and welcome back to a new review. For today we have another so-called bezel-less phone from China. This one is called the Bluboo S1 and it costs somewhere around $160, but like anything it really depends where you buy it from. Now, even though they call this a bezel-less phone, we still have bezels all around the screen, but we don't have that big forehead that we usually get for other smartphones, and that makes the phone a bit smaller for a device that has a 5.5-inch screen. As you can see for yourself, the phone is somewhat smaller than the OnePlus 5 and this makes the phone a bit easier to hold in one hand, which is a good thing. For specifications, we have the Helio P25 CPU. This is an octa-core CPU clocked at 2.5 GHz. We also have 4 GB of RAM and 64 GB of internal storage, and of course the device is running Android 7. Now, out of that 64 GB of internal storage, we have about 54 GB left, and that should be more than enough for pretty much everyone. But if it's not, you can easily install an SD card as internal storage. Now, before we go any further, can you help me out by pressing that like button? It's gonna make a huge difference for this video. Alright, so getting back to the phone. So there are a couple of disadvantages for having this bezel-less design. So the first one would be the fact that we don't have a light sensor, and that means that there is no auto brightness. So basically you have to set the brightness every time. If you're outside, you have to set the maximum brightness. If you're indoors, you have to lower it. So there is no auto brightness. Aside from that, we don't have a proximity sensor, and that means that whenever you talk on the phone, the screen is not going to turn off by itself. So definitely some disadvantages for this so-called bezel-less design. Aside from that, we have a gyroscope and all the other sensors that are available seem to work good. For its price, so for around $160, the phone doesn't exactly feel cheap, but it is made out of plastic pretty much everywhere. So the frame, the back, pretty much everything is made out of plastic. On the back of the phone you're gonna find two cameras. One of them is a 13 megapixel camera and the other one is a 3 megapixel camera. We also have a dual tone flash and the Bluboo logo. So how good are those cameras on the back? Well, like most phones in this price range, they're not spectacular. The camera app looks alright, but again, it's nothing spectacular and it's also kind of slow. So mostly in low light conditions, it takes a while for the camera app to actually focus and take a picture. We have a few modes in there. One of them would be the blur mode, and this is also called the portrait mode for other devices. And this is an absolute joke, and I don't recommend that you take any pictures in this mode because the phone basically makes a circle around the subject. Everything outside of that circle, it's blurred out, and everything in the circle, it's in focus. So it doesn't look good at all. There is also a monochrome mode available, but that's just a filter because this phone doesn't actually have a monochrome sensor. And there is also a pro mode where you can adjust different settings like the ISO and so on. If you take pictures during the day with that 13 megapixel camera on the back, the pictures do turn out good and pretty much the same that we've seen for previous devices with the 13 megapixel cameras. The pictures have a lot of detail and overall good color reproduction, but they are not spectacular, but they are usable for pretty much any social media. So for that, for daytime pictures, they are acceptable. As for pictures taken in low light, well, that's a different story, but keep in mind that this is the same for all budget phones, so there is no cheap phone that takes good pictures in low light. So all the pictures that you're gonna take are gonna look kind of grainy and a bit out of focus, but again, this is kind of normal for cheap phones. This is a quick recording with the Bluboo S1. I am recording in 1080p. As you can probably tell, the phone keeps refocusing every 2-3 seconds, so not the greatest. And we are moving back to the phone's body, and as I said at the beginning, the phone's frame is mostly made out of plastic. So on the right hand side you're going to find the power button and the volume keys, and these ones are also made out of plastic, but sometimes you have to press a button a couple of times for it to work. I'm not sure why, and I'm not sure if it's just my unit, but sometimes you have to press a button twice. On the other side of the phone we are going to find a SIM card tray, and as I said earlier, you can install an SD card or you can have two SIM cards. And moving all the way to the bottom of the phone, there we have the microphone, the USB-C port and the speaker. The USB-C port is a bit strange, and we've seen this in the past for a Yumi device a few months ago. So you cannot use a regular USB-C cable because the USB-C cable that you normally have around the house, it's not long enough. So you have to use the USB cable that comes with this device in order to charge it or connect it to the computer. So keep that in mind, you're not going to be able to use any USB-C cable. Supposedly the phone supports OTG, but I cannot confirm because I don't have a USB-C adapter long enough to actually fit the port, so I can't say if that's true or not. And the phone kind of supports fast charging. It's not the fastest charging out there, and it's going to take you around 2 hours to fully charge this device from 0 to 100. Since this is related to charging, inside this phone we have a 3500 milliamp battery. Now the battery life, it's not exceptional, but it's not bad, so it's about average. So I was able to make it through a day and a half on one battery charge, and out of that about 4 hours and a half of screen on time, so definitely not bad. And going back to the bottom of the phone for a couple of seconds, the speaker there, once again, it's average, but here is a quick sample of how the speaker sounds. I imagine that some of you are disappointed about the fact that we don't have a 3.5mm audio jack. However, there is an adapter that comes in the box, so you could plug in headphones if you wanted to. Now, realistically, you can just get some Bluetooth headphones, which are nicer anyways than the ones with the cable, and you can just do that. And myself, I use Bluetooth headphones for pretty much everything, even on my Samsung Galaxy S8, and they just sound very good that way. So no issues for me with the 3.5mm audio jack that's missing. And moving to the front of the device, all the way at the top, you're gonna find the speaker, and I don't really have any complaints about the speaker. And then we have a 5.5-inch screen with a 1080p resolution. The screen is quite sharp, the viewing angles are pretty good, so you can see the phone no matter how you look at it, and the colors are nice and vibrant. Now, what I don't like about the screen is the brightness, and I'm not talking about the maximum brightness, I'm talking about the minimum brightness. I mean, the phone doesn't get dim enough for nighttime usage, so if you're gonna take the phone in bed, well, it's kind of too bright for your eyes. I know that's not something to complain about, but yeah, it doesn't get dim enough. As for the screen sensitivity, well, it's decent, no complaints there, no problems when typing or playing games, and you can touch the screen in 5 places at the same time and the screen will register. On top of that, the screen seems to be covered by some type of scratch resistant glass, and they say it's Gorilla Glass 4, but there is no way for me to actually verify that, but it doesn't seem to get scratched that easily. The navigation buttons can also be moved around from the software, so if you don't like the back button on the right, you can just move it on the left and so on. And just underneath that, we have the fingerprint scanner and the 5-megapixel front-facing camera. The fingerprint scanner, it's not bad, it's accurate most of the time, but you're gonna have to wait like half a second after you actually touch the fingerprint scanner, so definitely not the fastest fingerprint scanner out there. Since the front-facing camera is placed all the way at the bottom, you're gonna have to turn the phone around every single time you wanna take a selfie, because otherwise the selfies are gonna look just weird. Now, if you have a lot of light, the selfies do look okay. I mean, not spectacular. And if you don't have enough light, well, the pictures don't look that great either. But again, this is normal for a phone in this price range. Performance-wise, well, the Helio P25, it's definitely not a powerhouse, so the scores that you're gonna get on the Antutu benchmark and the Geekbench 4 aren't the highest, but they're normal for the Helio P25. The only difference you're gonna see comparing this to a more powerful device is the time that it takes to open apps. So this one takes a second, probably more than a more powerful device, but that's not necessarily something bad. Once you have the app open, everything seems to work quite smoothly. So if you're to take Chrome, for example, zooming in, zooming out, scrolling up, scrolling down, everything seems to work quite good and on par with much more expensive devices. On the YouTube app, the maximum resolution is 1080p, and whenever you're watching videos on this phone, well, they look kind of different, not just because of the way the phone looks. So definitely a new experience while watching videos on this device. Gaming is also possible and done decently, and once again, because the phone looks a bit different, gaming feels kind of more immersive, if that makes any sense, and no problems playing games basically. Now, the phone gets a bit hot whenever you're playing games, but keep in mind that that's happening with pretty much every single phone out there. The GPS unit takes a few seconds to find your location, and depending where you are, mostly between taller buildings, you may lose your location for a couple of seconds. Connectivity-wise, the phone can connect to 4G networks. You also have dual-band Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, but there is no NFC. Now, the speeds that I got over 4G and the dual-band Wi-Fi are decent, but not the greatest that I've seen. As I mentioned at the beginning of the video, the phone is using Android 7, and on top of that we have Bluboo's own skin, but I have to say that it's not as bad as I was expecting. There is no app drawer, and moving in between screens is done better than I was expecting. Now, if you don't like how this looks, you can always install like Nova Launcher or anything like that, and you can make it look like stock Android. But overall, the UI looks very clean and well optimized, and this is the same case that we've seen for previous devices using the Helio P25 and Android 7, so no complaints about the UI. The settings app looks very close to stock Android as well, but we have some added features in there. But again, not all of them are that useful. But we have the double tap to wake up, for example, and that one works good, and that one is actually useful. But keep in mind, it's not exactly gonna work if you have like a lock screen on your phone. So the screen will turn on, but it's not gonna unlock the screen for you. And it's time to conclude this video. So for a phone that costs about $160, well, this is average, and I've seen better phones in this price range. For example, you could get the Xiaomi Redmi Note 4X, which is one of my favorite budget phones, and I'm gonna leave a link to that review in the video's description. So basically everything about this phone, it's average, but we get a very different look, and well, it looks better than a lot of phones on the market, at least in my opinion, and it's definitely much smaller than all other phones with 5.5-inch screens. Alright guys, hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you did like it, press that like button. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.